Now on page 41, the next source that we look at is target prospecting. Now this is an almost instant sale source. You're looking for a specific buyer for a specific property. And here's what you should say at every sales meeting each week. Ask the salespeople this one question: who has a buyer ready to buy now if I could find them a suitable property? Ask that question. Get the name of the buyer and the full details of what the buyer wants. Search in the required area until you find a property for sale. Keep going until you find a home for that buyer. It's a commitment that will make the team proud of you. Now the salespeople will be able to follow the reappoint strategy with their buyers and tell them how you, the home finder, will keep looking for properties that match their requirements. So they can say to the buyer, look, I'll make another time for you to come back in another week or so, and then by then we should have some more properties for you to look at. So we've got somebody out looking in the area, looking for the type of property that you've told me that you're looking for. Now, I'll highlight over on the top of page 42, it's much better if you have a photograph of the buyers with you so that you can show the sellers that you have genuine people. Remember what I said earlier, there was sales is all about evidence. Don't just make baseless statements to people. Oh yeah, we've got buyers in this area. Show them a picture of the buyers and say, these people want to buy in this street, would you like to sell to them? It'll give you so much more credibility with the homeowners that you visit when you're out door knocking. Hi, thanks for your time. Our real estate agency's received a request from two buyers, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They want us to locate a suitable property for them to buy. They told us this street was where they most preferred to live. Have you had any thoughts of selling? Again, the secret is to come straight out and ask for what you want. Now, personal prospecting, this includes door knocking. There's 3 action steps here. Select one street every week. Count the houses. Speak to everybody in the selected street. Use the GIVE approach that's explained in your Winning Ways manual. These pages contain scripts and suggested sales aids for you to use when you're out speaking with sellers. So you're just going out and just doing some general door knocking, just getting out and about in the area, just speaking with people. This is just general door knocking, not around other agent signs, nothing else specific, just out there looking for business. Page 43 is dirty house or empty house prospecting. Now this is the same procedure that you use as with personal prospecting. Select houses that look neglected, either empty or in a state of poor upkeep. Now remember too that the people next door, the people living next door, if you can write that in, they may also want to sell. I mean, if you're living near a run-down, neglected wreck and your house has got lovely manicured lawns, I mean, you know that house next to you is just bringing you down. And it also could mean that the quality of the people living in it aren't all that good either. So these people may not, the people with the neglected house may not want to move, but the ones next door may certainly want to get away from it all. You can combine your search for these on the same day as you do other agent signs down. Now, again, when you come up to these people, what you just say is, you don't walk up and say, look, I read in a sales course, I was told in a sales course that people that live in dirty or neglected houses might want to sell. Okay, so you don't come out and say, you do not come out and say that. You know, what you say is you just treat it in the same way as you would personal prospecting. Hi, I'm a real estate agent looking for work. When are you planning on moving? Or you show them the pictures of your buyers and you say, look, these people want to buy in this street. I'm a local real estate agent. I'm wondering, are you interested in selling? Just come straight out and ask for what you want. Be nice, be polite, and ask your questions. Now, withdrawns is the next one. Withdrawns, another gold mine of sellers. There are dozens of hidden sellers within the walls of your agency. Now, all you have to do is find them. Now, that's your duty, to find sellers. You should be capable of locating 2 or 3 sellers each month from these sources. This is what you might say. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm calling from XYZ Real Estate. Some time ago, you had your property for sale. May I ask, when are you going to come back on the market with us? So, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's Gary. I'm calling from XYZ Real Estate. Some time ago, you had your property on the market. I'm just wondering, when are you going to come back on the market with us? I want you to highlight those 2 words, with us, because it's important that you throw that in there. Just wondering, you had your property for sale some time ago. I'm just wondering, when are you going to come back on the market with us? An assumptive close, that's called. 336 prospecting and the heart buyer search. Now, you familiarised yourself with 336 prospecting during your practical evaluation. Now, the same procedures apply, with the exception of your approach script. Now, what you say depends on whether you're prospecting around another agent's sign or whether you're prospecting around your own sign. Now, if you're prospecting around other agent signs, and I want you to highlight the word around, remember, we never, ever, ever knock on another real estate agent's sign. So we're prospecting around their signs. Hi, thanks for your time. I'm with XYZ Real Estate. You may have noticed that there's a house down the road there that's up for sale with another real estate company. Now, often when somebody puts up a for sale sign indicating that they want to sell, other people in the street who have also had thoughts of selling think about doing so. So I'm just wondering whether you're considering selling your property. So may I ask you whether you're considering selling your property? So that's what you say. You know, you may have noticed that the house down the road is up for sale with another company. Often when a sign is erected on one property, it makes the neighbours think about selling too. May I ask, have you ever considered selling this property? Now that's what you say when you're prospecting around other agents' signs. Now what about when you're prospecting around your own agency signs? When you're doing 336 prospecting and the heart buyer search, so when you're prospecting around agency signs, as I've just explained, you use the script that I just discussed with you when you're prospecting around other agent signs. But when you're prospecting around your own signs, you do it by combining the prospecting with a heart buyer search. Now, in your company, your salespeople are out doing listing presentations, and more than likely, they're making a promise to sellers that the people who list with them, they're making a promise that within the first week or so of the property going on the market, the agency will conduct a heart buyer search. They'll go looking around the area for people who are locals, people who live locally, who may be looking for a house just like this, because often we find that people that pay the highest price for a property are often people who live locally. They'll pay a premium to get it because they love the area, and now this house has come on the market and this is just the sort of property they're looking for. So this is what your salespeople will be telling sellers. And they'll be saying that the agency will conduct a heart buyer search. Now as a home finder, it is generally your job to do the heart buyer search. When you're doing a heart buyer search, the search is twofold. First of all, you want to find out, do these people know anybody that might be interested in buying the property that your agency has for sale? The second thing that you want to find out is, do these sellers that you're talking to also want to sell? So you combine the heart buyer search with a little bit of prospecting looking for fresh listings. So familiarise yourself with the heart buyer procedure as explained in your Winning Ways manual, and you'll realise how important this search becomes to both your agency's reputation and to its marketing strategy. Search for heart buyers by speaking with every homeowner. Yes, again, you have to track down those who weren't at home when you first called. So you do this in each street where your agency has a for sale sign. Now you arm yourself with plenty of heart buyer cards. Knock on the door and you say, "Hi, thanks for your time. I'm with XYZ Real Estate. My agency is selling number 21 down the road. Did you know this property was for sale?" And you have a little chat with the sellers. And then, look, we promised the sellers we'd contact as many people as possible in the street, as many people as we could, to see if they have a friend or relative who might be interested in buying this property. It gives you locals a chance to choose your own neighbours. Do you know anybody who might want to come and have a look? And then, as the conversation progresses, you move on and say, "Look, I appreciate you giving this a bit of thought. Look, by the way, have you had any thoughts of selling this place? Do you know anybody that's thinking of buying or selling real estate? Thanks for your time." Now, the heart buyer search is one of the most important functions of a home finder. And I tell you what, if you move into sales, you will greatly appreciate knowing that a home finder, a good home finder, is out going around the area enthusiastically looking for people who might want to buy one of your agency's listings. It's a great thing that we tell our sellers that we're the only agency that does this. So you've got to do it regularly and you've got to do it well. On page 46, telephone prospecting. Now we're leaving this towards the end of our prospecting sources because telephone prospecting is certainly one of the lowest yielding sources, and we recommend that you use this source sparingly. Now, telephone prospecting aggravates many home occupiers. Now, even if it doesn't annoy them, you lose the opportunity to create a favourable first impression when you contact them by phone. So can you highlight, you lose the opportunity to create a favourable first impression? The best way to meet people is face-to-face. Because of the burgeoning number of offshore call centres, the Do Not Call register was legislated in Australia. Now, this places restrictions on how we use the telephone to generate business. Now, you need to know these laws. Now, as you most probably know, that to have a telephone list which is called a washed list. So where everybody on that list has consented to receive calls from agencies or has not opted out by going onto the Do Not Call register. And you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble if you start telephoning people. This is in Australia, of course, if they're on the Do Not Call register. But do you know what? A lot of people are sick of telephone prospectors calling up around dinner time, especially those with young children when they're trying to get them all fed and washed and into bed. And even though in New Zealand they don't have a Do Not Call register, they're just as sick to death of it over there as we are here. So wherever possible, all first contacts with homeowners should be face-to-face. Can you highlight that? You're much better off just getting out and talking with them. Now, a telephone is better used for follow-up calls after the first impression has been made, so highlight follow-up calls. Now, there are times when you need a faster method of speaking with large numbers of homeowners. Although telephone prospecting is a lower yielding source, it will certainly allow you to speak with more people. You know, when you have to walk up a driveway, knock on a door, speak with people, walk down a driveway, walk next door, walk up the driveway, it is slower. The telephone is faster. So if you're willing to sacrifice making a good first impression, the telephone can be used to top up your daily number of calls. So, for example, if you want to speak to 103 people a day, you've spoken to 80 of them door knocking, and it's getting later in the day, you might want to knock over 23 of them on the telephone. But I would be looking at using a warmer source. I mean, the chances these days of finding a telephone list that is properly washed so that you don't run the risk of calling people who have opted out of the Do Not Call register, the chances are quite slim that your list will be 100% perfect. So you're far better off using your warmer telephone sources, for example, calling up for sale by owners out of the Blue Book, you know, people with phone numbers. So you're much better off doing it that way. But if you want to top up your calls, the telephone is certainly a good way to do it. Now, if you are going to use the telephone for first contact cold calling, always be aware of the relevant legislation and comply with it, and highlight it's your responsibility to obey the law. That's at the top of page 47. You know, we can't put every law that's now or will be in the future into our manuals. So the responsibility is for you to obey the law in your area. Now, here's a suggested script when you're telephone prospecting. Hi, is that Mr. Smith? Hi, Mr. Smith. I'm wondering if you can help me. I'm a local agent. Don't pause. Experience tells me. So you just start off as though you're lost. I want you to think about this. If you were acting, they say, getting in character. Imagine you were lost in a strange town, and you'd walked up to somebody and said, excuse me, I'm lost. I'm looking for Smith Street. Do you know it? Can you help me? Okay, now, would that ruin your day? Would that scare you to go and talk to a stranger and ask them that question? It wouldn't at all. You're just lost. Can you help me? I'm looking for Smith Street. Okay, now that's the kind of thinking and that's the kind of mentality that you have when you're doing this kind of prospecting. So you call these people up, you say, hi, thanks for your time. Is that Mr. Smith? Hi, Mr. Smith. Look, my name's Gary. I'm a local real estate agent. You know, and by all means, if you need to identify yourself because of the law, go for it. But look, I'm just wondering if you can help me. Now, you don't pause and you say, look, I believe a property around you somewhere is coming up for sale. I can't say exactly where, but I'm just wondering, have you heard anything? Do you have any idea who it might be that's selling? Okay, now, look at the word that I've said there, believe. Okay, so can you highlight that? This leads me to believe. Highlight believe. Now, you don't say that you're told. I've been told a property around you is coming up for sale. That's not true. But for me, in every street, I believe that there is somebody selling. Okay? I believe that in every street, at any given moment, there is always somebody that is thinking of selling. So I believe that. I'm not lying. So I'm just wondering if you can help me. I'm a little bit lost. I believe that a property around you there is about to come up for sale. By any chance, do you know who it might be that's selling? Nice question. You just ask that question. Don't say that you've been told. That's not the truth. Always tell the truth. Now, experience will tell you that in almost every area, in every street, there's always somebody that's thinking of selling. So the telephone prospecting procedure, set yourself up for a minimum number of calls each day. Now, remember that as a home finder, you have to speak with a minimum. You have to speak to a minimum of 103 people a day. Now, I think this is about the third or the fourth time I've got you to write this down. I need you to understand that if you're going to work in an agency using the Real Estate Agency Management Program and you are a home finder, you have to speak to 103 people a day. There is no excuse not to. That is your job. That is what you're paid to do. Now, whether you choose to speak to these people with a certain amount of telephone prospecting or from for sale by owners or to let by owners or data down, online data down, it doesn't matter what source you use, but the 103 people from a variety of sources is what you must speak to every day. The important thing to remember is the number of calls and the quality of your calls. So I want you to highlight the word the number, just number and quality. So you've got to do a high number of high quality calls. You should call it a set time. Just block out that period of time and do it. Don't put the receiver back in the cradle until you've completed your set number. This will help keep you focused. Don't hang up. Keep going. It's a good idea to stand up when you're making these calls. So it's quite, if you're doing a bit of work on the telephone, put on a headset, microphone around the front, and stand up, and then take the phone off the hook, dial the number, okay, call. Just when you hang up, put your finger on the receiver, take it back off again and dial your next number. You've got to get the time between calls down to as low a possible time as you possibly can. Now, when I do the Winners Live interviews, as the technology's changed over the years, a lot of the times now I don't have to do I don't have to do live recordings in the field. So if I want to interview a winner, I can do it now over the telephone. But what I don't have is the advantage of the winner straight across the table from me. I don't see their face. I can hear the tone of their voice, and I can hear their voice. But without having them sitting with you, you certainly run the risk of getting a lower level of energy into the conversation. So what I do to counteract that is whenever I do a Winners Live, I've got my headset on, I'm in my office, and I stand up for the entire length of the interview. So I just stand up for the whole time. And I'll be talking to the winner, and I'll be asking questions, but I'll be on my feet and I'll be walking around. And I find that I get a much better energy of the conversation. I mean, after a while, I can even sort of picture their face, and I feel more like I'm talking to a real person. So you are more animated when you're animated. You know, just think of the words couch potato. Okay? They seem to go together, don't they? But what we want is an energy in our conversation. So if you're going to do a little bit of time on the telephone, consider getting a good headset, plugging it in, standing up, and just making the calls. It's a very, very good way to do it. Certainly what I do in my line of work. When you find a seller, make a note of it and keep going. When you've completed your set number, then you can make more accurate records, pass them on to your team, and make the entries in the officer's inquiry log. Now gauge your response and discover your strike rate. For every 100 calls, you should have 1 immediate seller and 4 future sellers. So for every 100 calls you make on the telephone, you should have 1 immediate seller. That is, it should turn into a listing, and you should have 4 future contacts. Remember, the success rate is lower from this colder source. Now over on page 49, if you have a strike rate that's below this, call the Winner's Circle hotline and write in this word for me: fix your prospecting presentation. Look, it is madness. It's the height of stupidity, actually, to make a large number of calls and get a poor result and not do something about what you're saying. I mean, if you call 1,000 people and you don't get any listing appointments, what's the point of calling 2,000 people? You're only going to annoy another 1,000 people, aren't you? And it just doesn't make sense. So if you're not getting a ratio, so if we say from telephone prospecting you should get 1 listing for every 100 calls. If you're not getting that, then sit down with your leader or call the Winner's Circle hotline, talk to one of the winners on your team, but get it right. Practice it until you get it right. And look at all of the ratios. You know, if you're not getting the yield, fix your prospecting presentation. Don't keep saying the same thing that doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense to do that. So fix it. Don't keep battling on with the same poor presentation. Now, low success with prospecting comes from a low level of action or incompetent action. You may have to change your style or increase your number of calls, or both. Now, the trust account or contact list. In a few weeks, you'll start to build a large bank of contacts. In real estate, there's a great deal of tomorrow business that salespeople are going to get. Oh yeah, I'm going to get that, you'll hear them say. Yet so often this business fails to eventuate. So what you must do is you must record and follow up future sellers. Record and follow them up. So you hand the lead to a salesperson, the salesperson doesn't turn it into a listing, well then you go back on to following that person up. Record and follow them up. Don't let anybody slip through the cracks. Record and follow up future sellers. Build yourself a great trust account. Build yourself a great trust account, and you will be a winner in real estate. Now see your winning ways manual. You know, I said it Winning Ways. Those first 40 or so pages, 42, 43 pages of the manual. That part 1, setting you up to sell, getting your head right, teaching yourself to speak to large numbers of people, setting goals, writing affirmations. These things are critically important. You don't want to ignore that first section of the manual. And you build yourself a great trust account, you will be a winner in real estate. Now, there's a lot to be said about what happens when nobody is home. You know, when we're prospecting, and we're on page 51 now, it's very, very easy when somebody is home. We go into our presentation, we ask the questions that we want, and we do our prospecting. But when nobody's home, what do you do? Now, this is what one winner had to say about what to do when no one's home. He said, the importance of what you leave under the door when no one is home is extremely underrated. A business card or a flyer, he said, just doesn't cut it. So he said, leave a photocopied handwritten note. And there's a template of that in your manual. This is just a simple little handwritten note. It says, sorry I missed you. I may have a buyer for your property and I was hoping to speak with you. Please call me on, and you write your telephone number in there. Thank you, Gary, XYZ Real Estate. And you just write that out handwritten. And so you just write out a nice little note. Now look, sometimes we've over the years we've had these printed up. You write it in blue ink, and you get it printed up so it's all very very nice, and you just have it so it looks a little bit like it's been torn off a pad, and you can get them actually printed in pads so that you can tear them off, and then you just leave that under the seller's door. So there's a sample there. Now there's something that we need to discuss here though. You are not paid to leave notes. You're paid to speak with people. Now if you're a home finder, you don't go up to somebody's front door and just put the note under the door and run away. Okay? Job number one, knock on the door. Are they there? Speak with them. Okay? They're not there, then you leave the note under the door. Okay? So only leave a note under the door in cases where nobody's home, if you can highlight that. Only leave a note under the door in cases where nobody's home. Now next is planning. This is planning. Now if you want to succeed, then you will follow a proven plan each month without fail. Now I want you to write in the words proven plan at the top there of page 52. If you want to succeed, you will follow a proven plan each month. Now I want you to take out your highlighters and I want you to highlight the word will. You will follow a proven plan each month. And then I want you to highlight those other two words, without fail. Most salespeople struggle. In good markets and in bad, there is always a section of salespeople that are always doing poorly. And the reason they do poorly is they don't plan. And it's an old cliche, but it's very, very true. You fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I cannot understand why a salesperson would fall short of target one month and next month not have a plan to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I believe that all salespeople and all home finders should have a plan. Now, as a home finder, your plan is, where do my listings come from? That's what you've got to have a plan. What listing sources am I going to explore? How many calls do I need to make to those listing sources? And how many listings will my team get as a result of me speaking with that many people? Now, plans for home finders and for salespeople are similar. Both are based around what we call the monitor chart. If you can write in the words monitor chart. Monitor chart. Now, planning is thoroughly explained in your Winning Ways manual, but here are some excerpts now. Now, it says in the Winning Ways manual, planning is a simple process if you know what you want to achieve. All you need to do is go through the winning actions that you're prepared to do. Now, you then add up the results that should come from those actions and compare the results to your targets. If the actions will not be sufficient to reach the targets, increase the actions. Alternatively, you can opt to go back to square one, revise your goals downward, and lower your targets to match the actions that you're prepared to do. In other words, if your plans call for you to speak to 103 people a day and you will get so many listings, you cannot get that many listings if you don't speak to 103 people. If you only speak to 50, you'll get half the number of listings. So your plans have to tie into the actions that you're prepared to do. So you need to have your plans. If you follow your plans, it will produce the results that you plan to get. Your plans have got to be that good. So you've got two options, do more or accept less. Now to plan, you examine the available sources of buyers and sellers. Now in the Winning Ways manual, we talk about asking what-if questions. And we use this and we build a monitor chart. We ask a series of what-if questions. And the what-if questions are built around the listing sources that we're prepared to use. Now, it's no point, for example, putting down door knocking on busy roads if you're not going to door knock on busy roads. So of all of the solo sources we've gone through in this manual, and there's probably about 15 or so of them that we've gone through, in a single month you might not be following all 15. You might only pick 5 or 6 of them that you are personally going to follow. So what you do is you write down the sources that you're going to use in this coming month. And you put them on what we call a monitor chart. And we build a monitor chart by asking a series of what-if questions. Now we're going to put a monitor chart, and we're going to build a monitor chart a little bit bigger than what we might do at, say, Winning Ways. So you write out a monitor chart. Okay, so you have the listing source. You can see the template there on page 53. You have the number of calls, and then you have target for listings target, which you'll write in green, and then you'll have the result, which we always write in red. Okay, so the monitor chart, the listing source, the number of calls, the target, and the result. Now a monitor chart starts off with just those headings: the source, the number of calls, the estimated listings, the estimated sales. And then down the left-hand side, we look at the sources that we're prepared to do. Now, let's ask a question. What if I went through the monitor chart? And what if I spoke to, and then we pick a number of people from it. So you write down the source, and you say, okay, let's just look at inquiry log. Okay, now we asked the question, what if I spoke to 100 people in the inquiry log? Not people that were highlighted in yellow, but people who were buyers with local phone numbers. What if I telephoned 100 of them and I said, how are you going when you're looking for a property, with your quest for a property? Have you found anything? Oh, no, we're still looking. Look, I'm just wondering, do you have a property that you need to sell before you can buy? Well, yes, we have. Now, if you ask that question of 100 people in the inquiry log, how many listings do you think you would get? So what if I asked 100 people that question from the inquiry log, how many listings would I get? Interesting question, isn't it? How many do you think you would get? Some of the more experienced people in the room, what would you say? 2? Definitely? You'd get 2? Now, what I'd rather you do is underestimate than overestimate. But, I would say to you, in our manual, we've been very conservative. We've said 1. Okay, so I believe, yes, you would get 2, but definitely you would get 1, wouldn't you? So the number of calls is 100, and we write a target of 1 listing in green. Now then you go through and then you look at, say, okay, how many people have I got in my contact cards? In other words, my trust account that I'm building. Now, if you have, what we use in this example from the Winning Ways manual, if you had 900 contacts and you spoke to those people every 3 months, you would get 9 listings a month from that 1 listing source. This is why I want you to remember the power of having contacts that you follow up on a regular basis. 100 people spoken to every 3 months will give you 1 listing per 100. You have 300 and you speak to them every 3 months, that's 100 calls a month, it'll give you 3 listings. If you have 600 and you speak to them every 3 months, that's 200 a month, it'll give you 6 listings. If you have 900 contacts and you speak to them every 3 months, that's 300 a month, it'll give you 9 listings. When you speak to 100 people every 3 months, it's 1 listing per 100 per month. That's the rough rule of thumb. Okay, now if you're starting out as a home finder, you don't have this source. If you are an established salesperson who has 900 people and you get your act together and you speak to them every 3 months, you could see, as it says in page 53 of this manual, that you get 9 listings from that source. Okay, but let's look at some of the sources now while we're talking about this, and this isn't in the example in your manual, but let's think about some other sources we could use by asking ourselves what if questions. Okay, what if let's look at to let by owners. Now, what if I spoke to 50 people who had advertised a property to rent? What if I spoke to 50 people? How many listings would I get? What if I spoke to 150 people who were to let by owners? How many listings would I get? What do you think? You'd get 1, wouldn't you? Yeah, so easy. So definitely. So what we say is we'd get 1. Easily we'd get 1. Okay, so let's underestimate and be conservative and say, all right, so if I made 50 calls to let by owners, I would definitely get 1. Now remember what we've got here now is we've got 150 calls. Inquiry log 100 calls, 50 calls to let by owner. Okay, and we've got 2 listings in 150 calls. Okay, so let's pick another listing source. Let's say, what, garage sales. Yes? All right, let's just use garage sales as an example. So we write down under our listing source garage sales. Garage sales. Now, we'd have to look at some of our garage sales past and present. I mean, you're not going to have huge numbers every weekend. But if you run a garage sale book, you might have, over the last 3 or 4 months, you might have some people that you could follow up, correct? So what we're going to look at is garage sales. Now, garage sales is one of these sources, there's not a lot of them, but the quality is very, very high. So if we spoke to, in the space of a month, would there be 2 garage sales a week, each weekend, 2 garage sales? So if we spoke to 8 people that were having fresh and recent garage sales, if we spoke to those 8 people, would we get a listing? Okay, now we might or we might not, but let's be conservative. If we spoke to 16, we definitely would. So you can, if you want to, put down half. I mightn't get a listing this month, I might get that next month. But it's okay to allow a half a listing. You see, it's part of your calls, isn't it? So I might luck it in and find somebody that is selling now, but if I do this every month, every 2 months I will get 1 listing from that source. And you can put on your plan a half a listing. You could say that if I was a salesperson and I ran spotter ads, I might only get 1 listing every 2 months. There's the other half a listing, which means that every month I might get a listing from a garage sale or from a spotter ad, but between them I'll get 1 listing. So half sources are okay. What you have to keep an eye on is the number of calls. If you're a salesperson, you need to make it that you speak to 200 every week. If you're a home finder, you have to speak to 515 every week. And you've got to make sure that the number of calls that you make is up to the level that you're being paid for. Okay, so garage sales. Think of another listing source. We'll just do one more by way of example, but think of one more of the listing sources. 336. Okay, so 336 prospecting. We write down the listing source, and let's do something where we're going to get the numbers right up. What if I found 20 signs, and I spoke to 3 people to the left of the property for sale, 3 people to the right of the property for sale, and 6 across to the street. In other words, 12 around each sign. That's 240 people spoken to. So 240 people. So that's how we 336 prospect, 3 to the left, 3 to the right, 6 across the street. Now, if you want to, when you're 336 prospecting, you can 6, 6, 12 if you like. But let's say that we spoke to 3 to the left, 3 to the right, 6 across the street. Now, the secret is, of course, to speak with them, not to say, oh, well, 2 of them weren't home. So you've got to speak to all of them, and you've got to keep going back and following up until you have. Okay, so 336 prospecting. What if I spoke to 12 people around 20 signs, 240 people? How many listings would I get? You'd get 3 for sure, wouldn't you? Okay, so there's 3 listings there. And then so on it goes. You write down the source. What if I spoke to this many people? How many listings would I get? What if I did this? How many listings would I get? What if I spoke to this many people in this source? How many listings would I get? You write down the source, you write down the number of calls, and you ask the question, how many listings can I expect? Now what you notice is that the number of calls climbs and the number of your listing target climbs. Now, so far, we've just used, for example, we've used 4 sources. The number of calls tallies up to be 398, isn't it? 398. And the total number of listings so far is 5.5. And we haven't completed the monitor chart. We've only used 4 listing sources, and so far we've only got just under 400 calls. Well, for a home finder, that's not a full week's work yet, is it? Now, remember, we do a monitor chart over a whole month. But what you see is the value of the what-if questions, don't you? It makes us think, what if I did this action and spoke to this many people, how many listings would I get? That is the critical factor when you are planning. You ask the what-if questions. It's a terrific way to find out exactly what sort of return you'll get for the effort that you make. Okay, so we're okay on the planning side of it? And this is what you've got to do at the start of every month. In fact, before the month starts, you've got to have your plan ready for the new month. Where are my listings going to come from? How many people am I going to speak to? What amount of listings can I expect from this amount of work? That is the critical factor. So what if? Now, solo seller sources, during your planning prior to the beginning of each month, always know where your month's listings will come from. If you can highlight down the bottom of page 53. Examine the solo seller sources from which the month's listings will be found by your own effort. Calculate the solo seller sources you will use, how many calls you'll make to each solo seller source, and how many listings you expect to get as a result of those calls. List these on a monitor chart. Now, this is an example using only 3 solo seller sources, and you can see that example there on page 54. And then highlight down the bottom of that, you must build your own monitor chart by asking yourself what-if questions. You build your own monitor chart by asking what-if questions. That's what we've just done. Now, the idea is to finish with a monitor chart that gives you a range of solo sources, about 5 to 8 solo sources, and a call tally of home finders. How many per day? 103. 103 per day. Salespeople? 40 per day. So home finders 103 per day, salespeople 40 per day. Your plan, the monitor chart, must show what solo sources you will use in the coming month, how many people you will speak to from each source, and how many listings will be achieved as a result of speaking with that many people. And if you can highlight that whole paragraph or put a square around it, that is what you've got to do, and you've got to know that at the beginning of each month. Now, as we come to the end of this program, let's look at some of the traps for the unwary, some of the problems that home finders face. Now, new home finders often fall into some common traps. We're on page 56. They fall into some common traps very early in their trial periods, and their results suffer. If they manage to successfully complete their trial periods, they carry these poor habits over into their sales careers, and the result is mediocrity. Don't let this happen to you. This is what some people do. They focus on problems instead of results and solutions. So it's a tough market. It's really hard to find listings. Well, yes, that might be true. Have you spoken to 103 people today? And often what you'll find is that they're wallowing so much in the problems that they're not doing the actions. So you can either work or whinge. That's about it. They focus on problems instead of solutions. If you're not receiving satisfactory results from the prospecting you do, reread part 1 of your Winning Ways manual. That part 1 is getting you right. And I've said at Winning Ways, it's the most important section of the manual, getting your head right. And I tell you what, if you haven't got goals, if you haven't got plans in place, you won't speak to 103 people a day. You'll start looking for excuses. But your job is to sell appointments for salespeople, to get the salespeople in the doors so that they can turn those leads into business. Your job is not to sell your leader on reasons why you can't make 103 calls. It's just not satisfactory. The next thing they do is they don't count their contacts, and that's explained in part 1 of the Winning Ways manual. We say that every person you speak to, you've got to put a stroke in your diary so that you know how many people you speak to each day. How many leads did that produce? How many appointment requests if you're a home finder? How many of those appointments turned into listings? You should know, if you're smart, what salespeople were better at converting leads. Okay, you've given 10 leads to 4 salespeople. Who turned more of them into business? You know, I'd want to know these things. Look at your statistics. How many people am I speaking to? What result am I getting per average of 100 calls? Count your contacts. There's no excuse for not counting. They ignore the importance of clear direction, goals, as explained in the part 1 of the Winning Ways manual. Those first 40 pages. If you want to be focused, go through those first 40 pages, set goals, write plans, write out affirmations daily. Dare to dream. They get spoilt by a good month. Do you know, I saw some leaders over the years and they said, if you want to keep salespeople motivated, don't pay them very much. Okay, they need to be broke and mean. This is what some people used to say. And they used to say that, then they'll have to go out because they're hungry. You've got to keep them hungry, is what some pretty crude leaders have said over the years. But, you know, I found it to be just the opposite. If somebody's broke and they're not travelling very well, they're not very motivated at all because they're in a constant state of anxiety, worrying over money. So that's why in our program, your leader offers to pay you a secure salary. But when they pay you a secure salary, they don't want stress and anxiety either. And if you think it's tough that your leader expects you to find properties for sale and to speak to 103 people a day, and if you're a salesperson, to speak to 40 people a day and to get 10 listings or more a month and to make 4 or 5 sales a month, if you think that's tough, you just try and see how hard it is paying salaries to people who don't sell, who don't get results. You want to talk stress and pressure? Try and pay big money, tens of thousands of dollars a year to people who don't perform. I've got to tell you, that's real stress, that's real pressure. And so what happens sometimes is, I don't agree that salespeople should be kept broke. You know, we believe that you should be paid so that you're not worrying about money, that you can pay your bills. But I've seen some people who've got a massive bonus check, and because they haven't had goals, do you know what they do? They just waste the next couple of months. They don't earn anything at all, and that money gets watered down into a very ordinary income, which is an ordinary income that they're used to because they haven't set their goals high enough. I've seen home finders that get out there, it comes straight out of the box and start speaking to 103 people a day, and they get massive results in their first month, fantastic results. Everybody thinks, isn't this person wonderful? And then they get spoilt by a good month, and the next 2 months are woeful. And yet I saw another salesperson who got to the level of Winner's Circle Gold Badge, and you know what he did? He went on the Peak Performance Plan. Chris Pisani from Johnson Real Estate, when he got his Gold Badge, he went on the Peak Performance Plan. The day after he was given his Gold Badge, he went on the Peak Performance Plan. He worked 6 days a week. He worked every day on the weekend for the next 28 days because he said, I've seen salespeople who get a Winner's Circle Gold Badge. It's like the kiss of death. Their performance plummets after they've got the goal. And this is the same thing that happened to the Apollo 11 astronauts. I mean, they walked on the moon. How do you top that? And so they didn't have a goal afterwards, and for a long, long time they were lost. Well, I walked on the moon. Yeah, we know you did. Yeah, good, Neil. Well done. Yeah, but, you know, I was up there. I was on the moon. There's no one else. It was just me. Yeah, we know. Shut up about the moon. You know, and of course there's this massive disappointment and depression that follows. And the same goes with a salesperson or a home finder. You know, they get a great result and then they sit back and coast. Isn't this fantastic? Righto, I'm a success now. What is it? One swallow doesn't make a summer. One good month does not make a winner. Okay, so don't let yourself get spoiled by a good month. Set your goals, set your plans, get back to work. Andrew Trim says, no one wants to see your scrapbook. Okay, last month was good. Okay, What you should say is only your mum wants to see your scrapbook. Yes, darling, that was really good. In April 2003, you had a really good month. Well done, son. Now that it's 2012. Come on. Yesterday's results are yesterday's results. What we have to do is, what am I going to get today? Don't get spoiled by a good month. They fail to plan. I want you to highlight that one. This is such a big one. Home finders and salespeople alike turn in pathetic results, and yet they allow those same pathetic results to travel into the next month. They spoil the next month as well because they don't say, well, look, you know what? It was a really bad month. Did I have a plan this month? No, I didn't. All right, I'm going to put a plan together and follow it next month so I don't have a slump 2 months in a row. They fail to plan. The biggest mistake that you'll ever make as a professional home finder or as a professional salesperson is not to plan. Where is my business going to come from? They fail to develop good follow-up skills, which ends with failure to follow every lead to the end. What they'll do is they'll go out and they'll do some 336 prospecting. They'll go to speak to 3 people on the left of the house for sale, only 1 will be home. Then they'll go and knock on the doors on the other side of the house and speak to 3 people on the other side of the house, and 2 will be home. And then they'll cross the street, and then they'll knock on 6 doors across the street, and only 3 will be home. And then they'll say, I did 336 prospecting. No, you didn't. You did 1, 2, 3. You've got to speak to 3. You've got to speak to 3. Then you've got to speak to 6 across the street. And until you've done that, if you have to go back 10 times until you've spoken to those people, you cannot say that you have 336 prospected that sign. You've got to follow every lead to the end. And we talk a lot about that in the Winning Ways manual. They fail to show a sense of urgency. A good example of this is they wait until late in the month before they call the Winner's Circle hotline, and then highlight even more stupid is not calling the hotline at all. I mean, I'm really sick. You know, somebody that whinges, no, I'm sick. What, have you been to the doctor? No. Next time you see them, oh, I'm really sick. What do you think about these people? You're a fool. Shut up. I don't care. Don't you? Are you really sick? Then go to the doctor. That's what you say. You've seen people in poison relationships, and all they do is whinge about what a mongrel their partner is. And what do you say? Leave him or leave her. But 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, they're whinging at you. Still, do you know what you do? You drop them off, don't you? And I say that a home finder that allegedly speaks to as many people as they say they're speaking to and they're not getting any result, that doesn't call the hotline, then they're stupid. They're sick and they don't want to go to the doctor. All right? Either that or they're lying about the amount of people they've spoken to. Now, for somebody to say, a home finder or a salesperson to say that they have prospected, for a certain amount of prospecting, quite naturally, you would expect a certain amount of results. Now, if the person says they've made the calls and the results aren't there, either 1, they're lying and they haven't made the calls. Option 2, they did make the calls, but they did them incompetently, so they didn't get a result. Now, either of those 2, if it was me paying the salaries, I couldn't afford to continue with a person like that. So if you have really made the calls and genuinely made them and you're not getting the result, then you've got to fix it or leave, because you have to get the results. There is no way around this. There's no way around it. Just as the bus driver has to drive the bus, the home finder has to find homes, the salesperson has to sell houses. That's our job description. That's what we do. They ignored the scripts and directions in their manuals and self-train. So in the manuals, we've got scripts that work. We've just been through a whole series of scripts that work. But, yeah, don't worry about that. What I'll do is I'll do it my way. Okay, now you need to understand this. Your leader has probably made every mistake that you could ever imagine. All of us put together, all of the experienced people in this room, okay, all of us have made every mistake that you could ever think of. So we don't need to pay you to go out and learn by trial and error. Okay? We don't need to pay you money to go out and come back and tell us what doesn't work. We know that. Okay? So what we do is we put into our manuals things that do work, so that you don't have to go out doing trial and erroring, if there's such a thing. So we put in the things in the manual that do work. And if you do them enthusiastically and competently in large numbers, you'll get results. But there's no amount of money for you. Your leader doesn't have anywhere near the amount of money that would be required for you to go out and keep making a whole lot of mistakes that we know that you don't have to make. There's just not that amount of money. So what you've got to do is what you're paid to do, and that is follow the scripts that are in the manual. I tell you what happens when somebody self-trains and decides to do it their way. I tell you what they do. You go out, some of these scripts call for you to put yourself into an uncomfortable position. You know, you're saying things that we're not asking you to lie, or we're not asking you to compromise on your values, but we are asking you to get out of your comfort zone. And to walk up to somebody, knock on the door and say, I'm a real estate agent looking for work. When are you planning on moving? With a big smile on your face. If you've never done it, it's quite a daunting prospect. And so what they do is, rather than ask that question in the way that it's been taught to them in the manual, they self-train. So they decide, look, I'm going to do it my way. And so I won't say it like that. I'll just say, oh, look, hello, I'm from XYZ Real Estate, and I'm wondering, because it's much more polite to say, I'm wondering if you're thinking of selling. And you turn it into a say-no question. And in sales, when you ask a question which demands a yes or a no answer, you'll get no 50 to 70% of the time. So almost definitely you can guarantee when you ask a question which requires a yes or no answer, most of the time you will get no. But the untrained person asks the question in such a way that they get no, they invite no. And so they take a script that works, water it down, and they don't get abused by the client, but at the same time they don't get any leads either. So there ain't that amount of money for you to go out and make all the mistakes, thank you very much, that we've made. We could write a manual that's 50 times the size of this one, probably 500 times the size of this one, with things not to do. And you would not be able to contribute one thing, because all of us in this room, we have been down the road of what not to do, and we know that it's a damned expensive road to be on, so thank you very much. You won't go down there, not while we're paying you salaries. Does this make sense? Do what works, it's in the manual, don't self-train, and don't follow your own scripts. They cease learning. Yeah, that's it, I've got the job. That's it, passed the exam. Yep, done the practical, right, now I'm in. And then they just stop learning and studying. Do you know, they say that with pilots, that the safest time for a pilot is immediately after they've got their license. Those first flights they do after they've got their pilot's license, it's the safest time for them, because they go right down the line by the book. You know, they plan each flight, they manage their fuel properly, okay, and it's the safest time. But then they start to get experience, don't they? And they start to take a few shortcuts. Tap, tap, oh yeah, that's okay. Look down the tank. They don't bother dipping the tanks. They look in, yeah, that's about half full, yep. And off they go, off into the wilderness, and then and silence, followed by, and what happened? Doing it their way, doing it their way. And this is what happens. You never ever cease learning. They say in flying that the one thing that a pilot's license gives you is the chance to start learning a lot more. Because you've got a lot of learning to do, and that's only the beginning, they say. And the same goes with this. You know, you start in sales and you're a home finder. Okay, you know how to prospect, but you know what you don't know how to do yet? How to look after listings, how to manage sellers, how to talk to them and about the marketing that you're going to do, how to convince them to list with you. You have to do a lot of training. And the idea of us starting you off as a home finder and having you prospecting is that you use this time to start working on building your sales ability. And the best way to build your sales ability is get out to meet with people, talk with people, make some mistakes, face a little bit of rejection, toughen up. And then, when you get into sales, you'll be much better equipped for it. But never cease learning. Never, ever, ever cease learning. They use typical take prospecting methods instead of the give approaches, as explained in this manual and in the Winning Ways manual. You know, they say, oh, for sale by owners, would you let me come and have a look at the property? You know, they use the take methods rather than give approaches that we talk about in our manuals. And then, if you can highlight this one on page 58, the last point there, they don't talk to enough people. They don't talk to enough people. You know, for me, I say 103 people a day, and if I get somebody that doesn't speak to 103 people a day, I just figure they're not doing what I'm paying them for doing, and if you worked with me, you would be fired. So the only chance that you've got of staying in an agency is you better hope you've got a weak leader who will let you get away with speaking to under 103 people a day. It's the job, it's what we've got to do. And in sales or in home finding, the biggest cause of a slump is the fact that we don't speak to enough people. Okay, you can always trace it back to that, can't we? We can always trace it back. The next trap for the unwary is that they think short term. The best example is how few ever invest in their futures by building a trust account. You know, so what they'll do is they'll go out and speak to people cold every day, but they won't take those people, put them into a trust account and follow them up and speak with them every 3 months. You know, when you start out home finding, everybody's cold. In that you've never met them before, they're all cold calls. But after you've been doing it for 3 months, you should have some people that you're following up. And so some of the calls you make in the day are warm calls, people that you've spoken with before, people that you're starting to build a relationship with. And you want to reach the point where most of your calls are warm and few of your calls are cold. But if you don't build the trust account and you don't start putting people in there and following them up every 3 months, you're always going to be doomed to making cold calls. And I tell you, after a while, it wears you down. Warm calls are easy, cold calls are pretty tough. They don't focus is the next one on page 59. They don't focus. This is a combination of goals mentioned earlier and the focus questions in part 1 of your Winning Ways manual, those first 40 or so pages of the manual. If you lack focus, it's because we don't have clear written goals, we don't have plans that we're following, and we're not writing out daily affirmations as it says in the Winning Ways manual. And then of course, the last one is they search for business in the least likely place. Now, I don't know why. Oh, yeah, well, actually, I do know why this is. I say I don't, but I do, really. Now, they search for business in the least likely place. And you know why they search for business in the least likely place? Because they haven't got goals. They can't imagine themselves as being successful because they don't have goals. And so they almost go on this career death wish. They go out and they speak to a large number of people, but they use the coldest source they can possibly find. Instead of using one source where you get a listing by making 15 or 20 calls, they use a source where you get a listing only after you've spoken to 100 or 120. They use the coldest sources. Either that or they go out door knocking and they go to a part of their service area where there are really established homes. In some parts of your service area, you might have houses that turn over on average once every 5 years. But you might go to this old established pocket in your service area where the homes don't turn over once every 30 years. And that's where they go prospecting, where they've got the least chance of getting a result. It's just a career death wish, and it comes down to a person who is not focused, who doesn't have goals, and whose heart really isn't in it. Now, if you are that person, I suggest to you that you'll eat yourself away from the inside out through heartache and anxiety until you either, number 1, set goals and get serious, or 2, leave. This is not the career for you if you're on a career death wish path. You know, set goals, set some plans, speak to large numbers of people every day, and go and look for business where it's most likely to be found. So they search for business in the least likely place. Now, the 6th step is pass the freeze test on page 60. Pass the freeze test. The freeze test is easy to remember. You apply it to yourself regularly. Imagine somebody walked in the room and said, "Freeze! Stop right now." Okay, let me ask you the question. Is what you're doing right now leading to a result? And you're a home finder, and you're just freezing, you're just clearing a paper jam in the copier. Is that going to get you a result? Freeze. Is what I'm doing right now leading to a result? And you need to stop yourself and ask yourself that question regularly. Was it a results-linked action? A results-link action. So was it an action that you could link to results? Results-link action. Were you doing an action referred to in this program? If so, congratulations, you're living up to your word that you gave your leader when you joined the company. The commitment that you've demonstrated to yourself and your company shows you're destined for success, and we're proud to have you with us. Now, here's a summary, what you'll do to guarantee the success of you and your agency. The role of the home finder requires firm commitment, a commitment to follow the winning actions. Your role is the perfect foundation for a future career in sales, and you've been chosen for this role because your leader believes in you. These are the 6 key steps to success as a home finder. Understand how your agency must operate to create prosperity. This includes having a thorough knowledge of the sales process, knowing that the results are measured in listings and sales. The second point is understand exactly how your role in the agency must function. Your simple duties are these. Find future sellers, find immediate sellers, introduce immediate sellers, now sellers, people who are ready to sell now to a competent salesperson. Can you please highlight the word now and the word competent? Each week your actions should create a minimum of 2 sales. Now each week your actions should create a minimum of 2 sales. Now it's about time that home finders and leaders who have home finders got serious. 103 people a day, we know that home finder will be responsible for 10 listings in the space of a month, correct? Yes? Okay, 10 listings a month if only half of them sold. Okay, so 10 listings a month, if only half of them are sold, there's 5 sales in a month. Okay, so that's just the bare minimum. So we've got to be able to say that the home finder should be responsible for a serious amount of sales. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to say that let's say a home finder speaks to the 103 people a day. Okay, so that's 500. That's 1,000. That's 2,000 in a month. All right, that has to be, as we've agreed, at least 10 listings. Okay, even allowing for a list to sell ratio of 50%, then that's got to be at least 1 sale a week, hasn't it? Okay, so it's at least 1 sale. So what we'll do is we'll change that to one sale. Each week your actions should create a minimum of one sale. Okay? A minimum of one sale. That's the minimum. And if you speak to 103 people a day, and if you get 10 listings a month coming into the agency as a result of you, a minimum of one sale, which is around about 500,000 a year, could be directly linked to you as a salesperson. Correct? Okay. Understand exactly how your role in the agency does not function. You must not work on anything other than the duties in your role. Okay? You mustn't work on anything other than the duties in your role. Join the Winners Circle and use its facilities, particularly the hotline. Learn from other winners. Understand the find seller actions you need to follow, and give yourself and pass the freeze test. Now, if you go over onto pages 63 and 64, you'll see the Home Finders Weekly Results Report. And this is a new report. This is for the management seminar. It's been put together as a one-page document. And so you'll have this weekly report that you'll fill out, and you'll read this at the company sales meeting. So your weekly report, you've got to prepare a weekly report which you will read to your team at every sales meeting. Can you highlight the word every? You'll have an opportunity every week to impress your leader and your team with your activity and results. And so you'll find available through your leader the Home Finders Weekly Results Report. You write your name on there, results for the week ending. This is what I did to support my team. And what you'll see there on that form, and when you get the form, it'll be a one-page form that you'll fill out. It'll have everything that's contained on page 63 and 64 on the form. The listing actions, the number of people spoken to, the appointments you set, and the leads listed this week. And if you go down the left-hand side, the listings action columns, you'll see there the for sale by owner, other agents signs down, online data down, to let by owner, garage sales, referrals, buyers and inquiry log, businesses for sale, general classifieds, skips, target prospecting, personal prospecting and general door knocking, dirty or empty houses, withdrawn, 336 prospecting, heart buyer, trust accounts and contacts, telephone prospecting, and any other sources that you might have used. Now you add them all up, and you write the totals. You write the totals on the form, and you'll be able to say, this is how many people I spoke to in the week, this is how many appointments I got, and this is how many listings that we were able to, that came from my efforts. Now then, on the form you'll also see there, if you have any concerns, please use this space for comments. Now another thing that is part of the management seminar is that the Home Finder must fill out a monthly scorecard. So the Home Finder must fill out a monthly scorecard, and you'll see that on page 65. What listings were obtained as a direct result of my actions? So the Home Finder monthly scorecard, what listings were obtained as a direct result of my actions? So you'll see number 1 to 20 there. By all means, use 2 forms. If you've got more than that in a month, that's fine. The name of the salesperson, the name of the salesperson who listed the property, the address of the property, and the source that it came from. Okay, that's your monthly scorecard. And your scorecard must be completed and given to your leader by the close of business on the 28th of each month. So what your leader is going to do, and this is now part of the program, is get that scorecard, and at the 28th of each month, look at how many leads came from your efforts, which salespeople got those leads, who listed them, and what your leader will see looking at that scorecard is that they've got a very, very valuable asset in you, that you're a hugely valuable asset to the company. You know, I wrote a little while ago a bulletin. In fact, it was not all that long ago at all. It was called Prospecting, It's Just Not That Difficult. And you know, prospecting is a lowish level of skill, but a high level of resilience. Okay, to face rejection and to keep going, you need that as a salesperson. You need as a home finder. You need clear written goals, and you need to get out there and speak to large numbers of people. But you don't need a huge level of skill. All you need is great presentation. You need to be a person that people warm to, and you come out and ask your questions. I'm looking for a bit of work. Are you thinking of selling? Ask the questions that you want to ask. Ask a lot of people, and you will get business. But while you're working as a home finder, you continue studying sales. And you know what will happen? You'll get better as a home finder automatically. But you'll get yourself closer and closer and closer to that day when you're ready to go into the sales team. And then you'll get off to a flying start. Now, don't underestimate, never look on prospecting as being an activity that's beneath you. If you feel it is, then you shouldn't be even in real estate at all. Real estate is all about people, getting out and meeting them, finding them, and finding those that we can do business with, and looking after them and turning them into long-term delighted clients. That's what the business is. And it all begins with what you're doing, going out and meeting people. It is a critically important role in the real estate agency. And then when you become a salesperson, it's a critically important habit to have as part of your overall sales skills. Salespeople who don't make it in this industry are salespeople who just won't get out and speak to people. That's why your apprenticeship as a home finder, we start you off by getting you going out and speaking to people, large numbers every day. After you spent 3 months speaking to 103 a day, when you come into sales and you only got to speak to 40 a day, it's pretty good, isn't it? Okay? But it's still a good large number of people spoken to, and it's a lot more prospecting than the typical industry salesperson does. That's why the typical industry salesperson struggles. Now, at the time of recording this, we just lost 10,000 salespeople out of the real estate industry. I can promise you not one of them was a good prospector. Do you believe that? I do. So thank you for joining me, and good luck with your career as a home finder, and good luck as you move into sales. Look forward to pinning a gold or preferably a platinum badge on you in the very near future. So all the best. Thank you.